Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top stories of the hour. Iran's foreign minister arrives in Oman for nuclear talks with the United States and calls for mutual respect. Iran says it seeks a durable deal based on equal standing and honoured commitments. This comes as an American naval buildup sits in the Persian Gulf. The US military says it kills 2 people in a strike on a suspected drug vessel in the Eastern Pacific. Officials say the boat is operating on known narco-trafficking routes and no US forces are hurt. Ukraine and Russia conclude a second round of US-brokered talks in Abu Dhabi and agree to resume negotiations. Both sides carry out a swap of 314 prisoners of war, the first in 5 months. US President Donald Trump launches a new website called TrumpRx, aimed at lowering prescription drug costs in the United States. The site allows consumers to buy discounted medicines directly from pharmaceutical companies. Netanyahu releases selected transcripts saying security chiefs assessed Gaza as a stable and downplayed the Hamas threat before October the 7th. He argues key information was not passed to him and places responsibility on IDF and Shin Bet leadership. Trump rejects Putin's offer to extend expired nuclear arms limits and calls for a new treaty. He says a modernized deal should replace what he calls a badly negotiated agreement and has previously urged China's involvement. Trump endorses Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi ahead of Sunday's snap election. The move is rare but follows his recent backing of other foreign leaders. Russia's Belgorod governor says nighttime Ukrainian shelling causes serious damage in the border city. Officials hold an emergency meeting to plan the response. Those are the headlines. We head to our top story. Iran and the United States are set to begin talks today in Oman, focusing on Iran's nuclear program. The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has arrived in Muscat, calling for mutual respect ahead of the negotiations, emphasizing that commitments must be honored for a lasting agreement. According to sources, US Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will lead the American side. With rising tensions and US military buildup in the region, the talks aim to address nuclear issues, although the US seeks a broader agenda, including ballistic missiles and regional proxies. While both sides are far apart, the outcome of these crucial talks remains uncertain. Joining us now to discuss this is Professor Rohan Gunaratne, an international affairs expert joining us live from Singapore. Professor, thank you very much for joining us here on the broadcast. All eyes are on these talks, of course, and the United States seeking this wider mandate of settling Iran's support for foreign proxies throughout the Middle East and also its ballistic missile program. Iran, of course, only saying that its nuclear program is up for discussion. Are these talks already dead in the water before they have started, as disagreements have already begun and red lines have already been drawn?
Thomas, as you mentioned, the Iranians only want to discuss the nuclear proliferation issue and not Iran's missile program or Iran's support for the terrorist proxies. So the Americans are very unhappy about it. The Israelis are very unhappy about it. The Americans and the Israelis work very closely on this, although America is represented in Oman, the Israel is not there. Of course, Israel is America's closest ally in the Middle East. So what we are seeing is that the Iranians are insisting that the talks focus only on the nuclear issue. and not on the missile or the proxy issue. So I believe that at some point the United States will mount an attack on Iran unless Iran agrees to discuss the missile issue, because it is the missile threat that is the imminent and the long-term threat to Israel. It is also the long-term threat to Israel that Iran continues to arm, train, finance, direct the proxies. In fact, Iran has restored the capabilities of the Ansarullah group in Yemen, or the Houthi movement, and also is attempting to restore the capabilities of Lebanese Hezbollah. So the Americans want to discuss real issues. Iran wants to manipulate the discussion and buy time. So this is the current state of affairs in the talks in Oman.
Professor Gunaratne, many groups are saying that the Iranian regime is at its weakest point since we've seen the revolution in 1979, following that brutal protest crackdown at the start of this year, along with that military build-up in the Persian Gulf. Do you think that the Iranian regime will be willing to make concessions when it comes to these issues, something that we didn't see, of course, before Israel's 12-day war?
You are very correct in saying that this is the weakest point of the Iranian regime due to the heavy build-up of American troops and American capabilities, but also because of the anti-Ayatollah, anti-regime protests in Iran. So I believe that this is the best moment to replace the mullahs and to restore a government that is democratic and that does not engage either in supporting terrorism or engage in firing missiles or building nuclear capabilities. But the question is, will the Americans now implement? The question is, will the Americans now implement the capabilities, will enforce these capabilities and fight Iran? Because it will be also difficult to restore the capabilities. It will be difficult to replace the regime in Tehran, because even if the Ayatollahs are removed, say they are killed or they are surgically extracted, still the IRGC, there's a very loyal force, loyal to the mullahs or the Ayatollahs that are in power. So regime change is a very difficult thing in Iran. But the Americans will have to do it sooner or later, otherwise Iran will continue to enrich there and build a functional nuclear weapon.
Going into these talks, what would be the best case scenario coming out of them, and also what would be the worst?
The best would be that Iran agrees to dismantle the nuclear program, dismantle the missile program, and of course the Americans will have to have intrusive inspection because the Iranian regime cannot be trusted, meaning inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency going to Iran and inspecting the nuclear sites and other places where they have capabilities to enrich uranium. Second is, of course, the inspection of the missile sites. And the most difficult will be Iran's continued assistance to the terrorist proxies. The Americans are interested in one other thing, that is whether the Iranians are going to hurt the protesters again. So I believe that Iranian regime cannot be trusted, and it is so important today to replace the Ayatollahs and build a very stable and a peaceful country for the people of Iran, because the people of Iran are very intelligent and they don't want these mullahs to run the country anymore.
Professor Gunaratne, do stay with us as we move from Iran and over to Israel for our next story. And in the newly released responses to the State Comptroller's inquiry on October the 7th, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has published a partial transcript of a cabinet meeting which was held on September the 12th of 2023, in which the former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant had said that the security situation was stable and urges Israel to hold back its forces against Hamas. The released responses aimed at shifting responsibility onto the leadership of the IDF and the Shin Bet were submitted to State Comptrollers Netanyahu Engelman on December the 25th of 2025. In the highly curated document, apparently designed to present Netanyahu in a positive light and minimize his responsibility for the October the 7th attacks, and also includes a summary of a September the 21st of 2023 situational assessment led by former IDF Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi. The assessment states that the Chief of Staff believes that it is responsible and possible to create a positive direction with Hamas through economic incentives. Professor Gunaratne joins us once again to discuss this ongoing situation inside Israel. In terms of this investigation into October the 7th, which of course saw over 1,000 Israelis dead and over 200 kidnapped, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is leading this probe in the correct way in shifting blame to his IDF and Shin Bet chiefs?
As a political leader, certainly Benjamin Netanyahu will want to protect himself. But we must also understand that the Shin Bet and the IDF are very professional organizations led by professionals. But unfortunately, it is very likely that these two leaders followed the political direction of the leaders. There's something called politicization of intelligence to accommodate the views of the political leaders. That may have happened. But again, I want to tell you that everyone is responsible in such a situation. It is the Prime Minister, the IDF chief, and the Shin Bet chief. And what is important is now to fix those challenges, because during that time, the thinking of the government of Israel was that by giving more economic incentives, Hamas will not go down the road of violence. But certainly the Israelis, although they are very brilliant people, they made a misassessment, and their assessment was flawed. Their thinking was resulted in a major terrorist attack. So the key lesson is threat groups, terrorist groups like Hamas should never be trusted. And I think that it is so important for the world to learn from this entire experience, and also for both political leaders, intelligence leaders, and military leaders to learn that they have to conduct themselves in a way, because they will be investigated, and there will be, as a part of traceability, as a part of accountability, when things go wrong, they will have to respond to those allegations. Otherwise, they will be fined and they could even be imprisoned.
And Professor Gunaratne, the Israeli Prime Minister as well has come under much criticism in the way in which he is conducting this investigation. Him and his coalition have repeatedly refused to set up a classic state commission of inquiry. What does that show to the Israeli public in the way that the current Likud government is committed to probing the October the 7th attack?
I believe that even at a later date, there will be an independent inquiry, and that is going to, it is better for this inquiry to look at all the aspects comprehensively, because sooner or later, when Netanyahu is replaced, there will be another inquiry in Israel, which will be considered more fair by the people. So what is crucial at this point is that any inquiry into October 7th massacre by Hamas-led terrorist groups be conducted in an impartial way, and those who made wrong judgments, they will be punished. And of course, the Israelis are determined to do that because they want to have the very best security and intelligence system, very best law enforcement and military system, and the very best political and governance system.
Professor, Israelis go to the polls later this year. There is this investigation, which is of course going on, and Netanyahu also faces a corruption trial that's lasted the past 5 years. What's the public sentiment around the Israeli Prime Minister right now, given the fact he is facing these investigations?
The public currently believe that Netanyahu is the best leader because he has dismantled many of the terrorist threats facing Israel. But again, the momentum against him is building with all these allegations. So there will be other leaders who will want to be prime minister. In fact, one of the strong emerging candidates is the former Mossad head, Yossi Cohen. So I believe that Netanyahu will be challenged because there are too many allegations against him. But again, leaders, political leaders, as you know, amidst these allegations, like President Trump, so many cases against him, but he still became the president. So I think that it very much depends on the capacity and the ability of.
Yes, Professor Rohan Gunaratne, thank you so much for taking the time in joining us. Great pleasure to have you on the programme. As always, we now turn over to the United States for our next story. And the United States President Donald Trump has launched a new website called Trump RX that he says will lower the cost of prescription medicines, which have long stood out for their sky-high prices in the US compared with similar products around the world. Trump says the new website allows consumers to buy discounted drugs directly from pharmaceutical companies. The White House has said that the website is launching with savings on more than 40 popular drugs. Users can search the site for the medication that they want, then print out a coupon and present it at a pharmacy to buy at the discounted price. The Trump RX site, which promises the world's lowest prices on prescription drugs, showcases more than 40 medications, including weight loss drugs such as Ozempic and Wegovy, and calls the effort the most impactful prescription price reset in the history of America. Let's listen in to what Trump had to say on the launch of the site.
This is a very big deal. People are going to save a lot of money and be healthy. So we're here this evening to celebrate the launch of one of the most transformative healthcare initiatives of all time. There's never been anything like it. Starting tonight, dozens of the most commonly used prescription drugs will be available at dramatic discounts for all consumers throughout a new website. It's called TrumpRx.gov. That's TrumpRx.gov.
Joining us now to discuss this in more detail is Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, the chairman of the Nephron Clinic, joining us live from the Indian capital of New Delhi. Thank you very much, Dr. Bagai, for joining us here on the broadcast. Do you see any issues that are going to be arise from this situation with Donald Trump, and why has America been facing such high drug prices in recent years compared to the rest of the world?
Good morning. So there are 3 quick points. One is, of course, the cost of medication and cost of healthcare itself in USA is prohibitively high, even for average Americans. I'm not even comparing it with the Indian healthcare system, because the Indian healthcare system is 1/10 the cost at the same level of clinical competence. And the drug delivery system is also extremely expensive. So I think US overall has to take a relook and re-strategize as to costing, because a large chunk of the patients money is spent once the patient is discharged from the hospital or on tablets and syrups and other injectables which are given at home. So what we call as home care. Point number two is I think this initiative is good because it will bring down the cost. What I've read on the website is 33 to 92% decrease in costing, means discount. And there are about 6 or 8 companies, including Eli Lilly and Pfizer, which are already on board. So this will significantly decrease the cost impact on patients. But more importantly is that a lot of medicines which are not covered may still hurt the average American. And also there is a process to go through in which you log in, take a coupon, then go to the pharmacy and things. But all the same, having said that, I think the initiative is in the positive direction. The intent is correct. The cost of medication must come down. And overall, I think US has to relook at the pricing of pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals make a lot of money. And let me tell you, even if they're giving 33 to 92% discount, it doesn't mean they're not making money. They're still making a profit. So if you don't give the discount, you can very well imagine what the profit or the profitability or the profiteering is.
And what about these drugs that are on Trump RX? We have the likes of weight loss and diabetes drugs, the likes of Wegovy and Ozempic, as we've already mentioned, but also the likes of Repatha, a cholesterol-lowering treatment, Januvia, a diabetes medication. You've also got the likes of Eucrisa and other things. Is there any other medicine that is central to the United States medical field, which you believe that should be included on this as well? And what are the barriers that you think are having to be jumped over in order to achieve this?
Important question. So anything which requires long-term medication. So if you look at chronic diseases, which we call as chronic ailments or lifestyle diseases, be it hypertension, arrhythmias, heart failure drugs, diabetes, obesity per se, or not only injectables, but oral tablets for diabetes, asthma, chronic obstructive lung disease. More importantly is post-transplant patients for immunotherapy, and also anti-cancer treatment, which is after the therapy is finished in the hospital, surgery or radiotherapy or chemotherapy, once the patient comes down to a maintenance therapy at home. These anti-cancer drugs, immunosuppressants also are very expensive. So the gamut should include all. What I would actually expect Trump to do, Mr. Trump to do, is call the pharmaceutical giants and tell them this is the broad guideline of pricing. You can play within this bandwidth, but not beyond that. And I think it's possible because the drug companies have made a killing in the last 10, 15 years, not only in US, but all over the world. The classical example is the same drug of, let's say, GlaxoSmithKline or Pfizer or Eli Lilly or White is available at a lower cost in India. The drug is the same. The pharmaceutical composition is the same. The company is the same. The ingredients are the same. The constituents are the same. How on earth is the pricing of these same medications in the international market much more than India? That's the question US needs to answer.
Indeed, and as you've said, that the pharmaceutical companies will still be making money from this. But the question is who ultimately absorbs the cost of these discounts? What do you think is more likely, pharma companies, pharmacies, or patients through other channels?
The entire structure of US healthcare, vis-a-vis even, say, for example, the healthcare in UK, is very much tilted towards a referral system. And then going into the hospitals, it relies extensively on investigations, and there's a risk of medical legal cases being put on doctors and the healthcare chains. So I think it's hugely defensive practice. And unfortunately, in this era of hugely defensive practice, that means you over-investigate, get every test under the sun, which is required or not required, just to be on the safe side. This is going to hurt the patients. It's hurting the Medicare. It's hurting the insurance companies. But I think somewhere down the line, we need a more rational approach towards treating patients, irrespective of the risk of being sued or not sued. What is correct is what should be done, and not done what is under the fear of perhaps may happen to you.
Dr. Sanjeev Bagai, thank you very much for taking the time and joining us. It's a great pleasure to speak to you. We now turn over to East Asia once again for our next story, and the pro-democracy Hong Kong media tycoon Jimmy Lai is bracing for a crucial legal battle before his sentencing. Lai, founder of the Apple Daily newspaper, has been charged under Hong Kong's national security law, and his case has drawn international attention. Reports say the outcome could have broader implications for press freedom in the region. Advocates call for a fair trial, while authorities maintain that the proceedings are fully legal and transparent. The court is expected to announce sentencing very soon, with many watching closely to see how this high-profile case will shape Hong Kong's legal landscape and the future of press freedom. Next, we turn to Europe, and the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics kick off today with a star-studded ceremony at the San Siro Stadium. The event, celebrating Italy's fashion and modernity, features performances by Mariah Carey, Andrea Bocelli and Lang Lang. The Olympic flame has reached Milan, with alpine legends Alberto Tomba and Deborah Compagnoni rumoured to carry the torch. Events have already begun, with curling and ice hockey underway. American skier Lindsey Vonn, recovering from an injury, is set to compete as well. Tensions are rising over the US immigration role at the Games, though organisers seek to keep focus on the event. Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news.